Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is ANPR All Night Project Radio. I'm your host, Ryder, and I'm glad to welcome you back to another broadcast this evening. Certainly hope everything's going well for everybody. This is Monday night. It is January 22nd, 2018, recording at 11:06 p.m., a little earlier than normal, and hopefully I don't know. I'm not quite sure if I want to continue to record this early or wait till a little bit later. I haven't really decided exactly on when I should be recording. The reason I'm recording a little earlier now than I did the last couple of times is because it took me hours, absolutely hours, to get the last broadcast up and on YouTube. For some reason, when I was attempting to render the video before posting it, it kept freezing up at about 18%. So it took me about 5 or 6 attempts, and I had to fiddle with some settings, which honestly I don't understand, because the rest of them have all come out the same and have not had a problem. So I don't know if there was just some sort of error that I was running into, or what exactly it was. Regardless, it did take a little bit more time to get done and posted. I don't think it got posted till about 3 o'clock in the morning. So maybe if I start recording these broadcasts a little earlier, they can get up on the channel a little bit more on time. I mean, I say on time. I don't think we really have a set time, but I don't know. I figure I'd like to get them up on a pretty regular basis. Right around the 12 o'clock mark. Perhaps that's not the best time for uploading. I really don't know, but for now, that's what we're doing, and that's kind of what I'm going to work for and strive for. So, I've been thinking about the broadcast and trying to think about some things we can talk about, and something that came to mind was I recall I'm not sure if many of you are familiar with John Hodgman and his work. He certainly is one of the people that I look up to, kind of one of my heroes. I absolutely adore John Hodgman, and he's made a number of books, a series of books, 3 books that are all sort of false information books. So they're a blast to read, and the audiobooks in particular, as read by John Hodgman, are absolutely amazing. He does one thing in these books entitled This Day in History, and in that he makes up a thing that happened in history. So if really in history it was something along the lines of, say, Teddy Roosevelt did something of note, John Hodgman might say, on this day, Teddy Roosevelt lost his hand and now has a hook for a hand. Or on this day, Teddy Roosevelt bought a new dress for his pet teddy bear. Things along those lines. He would completely make them up. But most of them would be made up in a way that could almost be believable if you didn't already know that it was a parody. But I really liked the idea of this day in history, and as I was browsing around on the web, I noticed that there actually is quite a few things, quite a few different websites and things that you can use to look back on this day in history. And there, especially history.com. So I was thinking about maybe bringing a new segment to the broadcast, which would be This Day in History. Looking at history.com to use, as the sort of jump off point for this, there is quite a bit of things that they have listed. They have lead stories, they have things that talk about recent history, like some automotive history in 2009. They have things way back in the 70s. They have things from the 1800s. For example, on this day in history, January 22nd, British colonists reach New Zealand. which I think is really kind of an interesting. I mean, I know nothing about New Zealand, so we can take a quick look here and see what happened. Under the leadership of British statesman Edward G. Wakefield, the first British colonists to New Zealand arrive at Port Nicholson on Auckland Island. In 1642, Dutch navigator Abel Tasman became the first European to discover the South Pacific island group that later became known as New Zealand. While attempting to land, several of Tasman's crew were killed by warriors from the native Maori people, I hope I said that right, who interpreted the Europeans' exchange of trumpet signals as a prelude to battle. The islands were named after the Dutch province of Zeeland, did not attract much additional European attention until the late 18th century, when English explorer Captain James Cook traveled through the area and wrote detailed accounts of New Zealand. It goes on, and there's quite a bit more, but I think that pretty much covers any cursory information that we might want. One other thing of note that I want to bring up for this day in history is that on this day in 2008, sadly, Heath Ledger was found, and by his housekeeper, found dead. And this is kind of infamous with his role as the Joker in the most recent Batman trilogy. And I believe the speculation was that he was taking prescription medication because of having nightmares, but rather he took too much. So let's take a look here. Though his personal life might have been in turmoil, Ledger's professional life was flourishing in the months before his death. Near the end of 2007, he was in London filming Terry Gilliam's The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus. And he told Bob Dylan, I'm sorry. In addition to a role as one of several of Bob Dylan's alter egos in Todd Haynes' I'm Not There, he also recently finished work on The Dark Knight, in which he played a version of the Joker. In interviews that would be scrutinized exhaustively after his death, the actor admitted that the Joker role had been difficult for him, and that he had been using prescription drugs to manage reoccurring bouts of stress and insomnia. The report stated that he died of an accidental abuse of prescription medications that included commonly known painkillers, anti-anxiety drugs, and sleeping pills. So, quite a somber note, I guess, to start the broadcast on. But, it's good that people don't forget Heath. I think Heath did a very good job in most every role I've seen him in. The first thing I ever saw him in was A Knight's Tale, which I thought was a pretty good movie back in the day. And then, of course, his role as Joker in Batman. So, that was this day in history. Please let me know in the comments below or through a message if you enjoyed this day in history, and we'll continue to do this. I think this is an interesting topic and something that we can perhaps continue to do throughout the course of the broadcasts. Moving on to the weather, which I actually did skip in the beginning and kind of overwrote that with our new segment. It is currently 46 degrees Fahrenheit. The humidity is 78%, precipitation 0, and the wind is at 9 miles per hour. I, for one, am quite glad that the weather is getting better, and we did receive the rain that was promised last night for last night's broadcast. Not a whole lot of rain, not as much as I would have liked. I am a big fan of rain. And I think falling asleep to rain is probably the best way to fall asleep. Growing up, I used to live on a farm in Tennessee, and we had tin roofs. And listening to the rain hit the tin roofs while attempting to fall asleep was perhaps, I presume it was nature's melody. I really found it quite soothing and was able to utilize it to fall asleep quite effectively. I've always suffered from a bit of insomnia, And so anything that helps me get to sleep is something that I'm certainly down for. Sometimes when I'm having particularly difficult times falling asleep, I will throw on some sound effects of actual rain with a little bit of thunder, lightning. Videos that you can find on YouTube will play like 10-hour segments of that, and it really is helpful for me to fall asleep. I know a lot of people require some sort of what they call white noise, and to help them fall asleep, whether it be a television on very low in the background or a fan. Sometimes people just need a fan to have some white noise. Um, and I believe people who have like ear ringing issues use that as well to help them be able to fall asleep. So, but yes, so the rain, it looks like our schedule for tomorrow is morning rain with a 90% chance, southwest wind of 12 miles per hour, and it looks like the rain is going to fall off at probably about midday, sadly. I'll probably be asleep for most of that. A little disappointing, but no worries. Maybe it'll start raining again before I fall asleep, and I can fall asleep to some sounds of the rain. Speaking of tomorrow, tomorrow starts my second day in college in this semester. My first day did kind of get me worried right off the bat. Day one, very first assignment in one of my classes, was to pick a topic for a research paper, meaning that we're wasting no time diving straight in to, the research paper. So I have 2 months to fully prepare for this research paper, and if I'm smart, I will read ahead. I will determine what it is that I need for each week upcoming, and I will not procrastinate, and I will be able to write the paper with no problems. That's if I'm smart. However, I'm very rarely at least it's the follow through that I lack. I believe I am smart enough to understand what I should do. However, it's the follow through that I have a problem with. And last semester, I know that I certainly did not have the follow through, and I was sitting up writing pages and pages and pages on the very last day that everything was due. So hopefully I will have the foresight and also the follow through to be able to work on this stuff in advance, at least in advance a few days, if not by a week or so. I think that would probably be the smartest thing to do. My college does also offer a free sort of program, I suppose you'd call it, where I am able to submit my paper to other students, professional students, students who really understand the particular writing styles. And they will pretty much pre-critique and pre-correct the papers that you submit to them. So, in this manner, if I did get my assignments done with 3 to 4 days to spare, because they do ask you to allow them 2 to 3 days to respond. If I did get my work done within that frame of time and could submit it, it would definitely improve my papers, or the grades of my papers. Because the one thing I've always had issues with, I've not really had issues writing as much as I've had issues with formatting. And when I say formatting, I don't mean paragraph formatting. I mean formatting in the sense of doing the proper footnotes, doing the proper bibliographies, and putting the right names in the right places, putting the periods and the apostrophes and the commas and all the different manner of formatting that is required for bibliographies, page numbers and whatnot. And getting the information is not generally an issue, but putting them in the right order is the biggest issue. Some professors will ask you to format it one way, which may look like last name and then first initial. of the author. Then some would say put the year right after that in parentheses followed by a period. Then you would put the title of the book, or the title of the article rather, and that would be in italics with quotation marks around it, followed by a period. After that, in non-italics, you might put the journal article's name. Followed by that, you would put perhaps the journal issue, and then followed by that with a period. Then after that, you'd put a page number or a series of page numbers, then a period. Other people may ask, other professors have asked in the past to not have the date the second part of that bibliography, but rather have it at the end after the page number. So things like that, where you can have everything 100% accurate, but one thing might be moved because of one professor's preference over the other professor. And so if you're doing a class like I did last time, where I had two classes that had slight variations, it got very confusing very quickly. So being able to submit something like that in advance is probably something that I will work very hard to do in the future and stop this procrastinating that I tend to do. I always do get my assignments turned in on time. However, the procrastination, I think, is something that probably more than just myself suffer from. Procrastination is something that I've always had a sort of a problem with, and a continuing struggle. It isn't to say that I never get things done, but I always seem to wait to the very last second to do so. It's more of a enjoy the moment now and rush to get things done later, in opposed to getting things done in advance and then being able to know that things are completed, that things are finished, and sort of moving on from there and enjoying the time then afterwards. And of course that would certainly, at least in theory, reduce my stress level quite significantly, which is something I'm always looking to do. So hopefully I can, since I understand that, and since I know that, hopefully I can start living by that and moving forward. And that is indeed my goal and the intention that I have here. As I said, I'm sure many people suffer from laziness or from procrastination, and honestly, they're both sort of the same thing. Though I think procrastinators more so than people who are lazy. Procrastinators have a very diligent kind of work ethic. At least I do myself when it comes time to do a thing. Whereas I believe, at least in the definition of a lazy person, is that they won't give it their all when they do start to do a thing, which is perhaps the biggest differentiation between lazy people and procrastinators. Because my work ethic, I think, is very good when I do my work. I just procrastinate starting my work. However, I believe if I was lazy, I would have a much worse work ethic. And in that way, yes, I would still be putting things off, but I'd also not be able to successfully get A's and B's in my classes and also turn out good work at work as well. And I've noticed that I feel like I procrastinate most on things that are on, say, the personal side of life, as opposed to work life. In work, I've never really procrastinated much at all. And if I procrastinate at all, it is by only a few minutes, putting something off for a few extra minutes. Never have I, well, honestly been able to, but never have I even decided to attempt to push something off for days or weeks or whatever it is. Generally, in a work setting, and I'm sure most of you would agree, in a work setting, you really don't, you're not afforded the opportunity to put something off. So perhaps, let's say you are renting where you live, and your landlord is coming by, and you know they're coming by on Friday. Well, today's Monday. Some of you may instantly clean and then just keep tidying up until Friday. Others, who may be procrastinators, may wait till Friday. Till Friday, or even a few hours before the scheduled visit is. Unless, of course, you don't know when on Friday, in which case you'll probably clean on Thursday. A lazy person, on the other hand, would more than likely wait also till close to the last second, and then take most of their items and, say, push them under couches or throw them in a closet, or maybe hide all the dirty dishes in some cabinets, or in a dishwasher, and things along those lines. So I'd think that would be sort of the definition of and the separation of those sort of people. So I'm working hard to get away from the procrastination and carry over the good work ethic that I have into doing things on time. Another thing that I wanted to bring up was something that a friend of mine and myself were talking about when I was over his house yesterday, eating the steak dinner that we had together. And you'll know if you listen to the last broadcast how that went. But one thing that they brought up to me, and this is something I was actually not aware of, but apparently it's kind of recent in the news, and that is that I guess it's very popular now for young people to be eating Tide Pods. Tide Pods, for those of you who don't know what they are, is essentially, well, it's a pod. It's approximately Easter egg sized, the little, either the chocolate Easter egg candies or perhaps the plastic Easter eggs that you would be able to crack in half and put some sweets in or something and hide for your children. Well, these pods are approximately that sized, and what they basically are is detergent that has been powdered and compressed into those pod shapes. And then they are used generally, their intended use is to be dropped into your washing machine and, ran through. And it's basically just a way to get soap in your washing machine so you can clean your clothes. However, it seems as though young people have now taken to daring others to ingest these laundry detergent packets. Now, some of you may remember the Cinnamon Challenge. I remember that way back in the day. I'm talking at least 8 or 9 years ago, at least 7 years ago. The Cinnamon Challenge, I've seen the McDonald's Syrup Challenge, which the McDonald's Syrup Challenge was even older, I believe. And it was where you take the nasty, terrible syrup from McDonald's and drink like 4 or 5 of them and try to keep them down. And then I've heard something about a gallon challenge. I'm not quite sure what a gallon challenge is. I'd imagine it has something to do with probably drinking a gallon of milk all in one sitting without stopping. I know that there's also been other things along the lines of, holding ice in your hand for as long as you possibly can. There's even been dangerous things that people have been doing. I know there's the ice water challenge. However, that does promote, good things. The ice bucket challenge is designed to bring awareness to ALS and to try to raise money for that. But people were taking it further and doing boiling water, and things along those lines. So that's kind of in the vein of this Tide Pod eating challenge. And I don't know the specifics of the challenge. I don't know if the challenge is eat a full pod, eat 3 pods, or just bite into one and chew it for a while. I don't know exactly what the rules of this challenge are, and I don't want to know. And I'm not bringing this up because I want to see this happen. I'm certainly going to say, please do not participate in any of these challenges, in any of these potentially deadly challenges. or severe injury causing challenges. I mean, these are horrible, and you wouldn't think you'd have to tell somebody or to warn somebody not to do things like this. However, I think most people who are involved in this are young people who are quite impressionable. And you can't, as an adult, look at a young person who is impressionable and just believe, without saying anything, believe that they'll be able to stand against some people pressuring them into doing things like this. So I think it's very important, if if you know somebody who is a risk taker or things like this, to maybe have a talk with them, and be a voice for good and a voice for reason in situations like this. So if you do know any people, any young people like that, I encourage you to speak out and warn them about it. But basically, and as I've read through a number of articles trying to find out exactly where this originated or how it started, most people don't really have a starting point for this. But I mean, things like this, these little washing pods, these Tide Pods, they've always been under scrutiny, at least to a degree, because of the fact that young children can find these and ingest them, and I'm sure they smell very nice. They're intended to smell nice. So I know that there's always been concerns about things like this, and even just regular detergent and cleaning supplies. There's always um and a sort of always ongoing discussion, I think, not in the media, but where if you have young children, you just know, or you have to get these things out of their hands. And, generally you only see things like this with younger children. And hopefully, maybe with this Tide Pod thing going crazy, going viral, I guess, hopefully this will awake more adults and parents to make sure that they keep these things locked away from their children, because they are poisonous. They are deadly. I'm seeing here some statistics where it says that U.S. poison control centers last year received reports of more than 10,500. That is a lot. 10,500 children younger than the age of 5 who were exposed to the Tide Pod capsules. Now, whether that's exclusively Tide Pods or if that's, laundry detergent capsules in general, I don't know. However, that's a lot of children. I mean, 10,500 children. Potentially, each one of those children could have died. They could have ingested too much or not been seen soon enough and have died. And that is an insane number. So hopefully this awareness is now coming out to the point where people will be more responsible with these things. That same year, about 220 teens were apparently exposed, and about 25% of those cases were intentional. And that's coming from the Poison Control Center's data. So even back in 2017, 25% of 220 is about 55 teens intentionally ingested laundry pods. So far, as of the writing of this article, it says in 2018 there have been 37 reported cases among teenagers. Half of them have been intentional. So, I mean, this is something that I think is very important to be brought up. And it brings me back within my own mind. I immediately, when hearing about this, when I was at my friend's house, this was, kind of our after dinner discussion. And I recall that ages ago, again, going back at least 6 or 7 years, I recall being introduced to a YouTuber of the name Shoenice22. And I remember that when I was introduced to him, the very first video that I saw of his on his channel was him eating a stick of laundry, or a stick of detergent, like an armpit stick of detergent. And he just sat there in front of his computer. He claimed that I believe he said he was drunk off of perhaps vodka or something, and he just recorded himself eating the stick of deodorant. Now, at the time, I was much younger, and I just thought this was, probably, it was gross. I certainly thought it was gross, but I also assumed that it was probably staged, and I did not believe that he genuinely ate a stick of deodorant. Um, but I do remember that the person who showed it to me also showed me a few other of his videos, which were, as I suppose you could use the word harmless, which were as harmless as him eating hot peppers, to as dangerous as him eating glue, um, caulking, motor oil, drinking motor oil straight out of a motor oil jug, and all sorts of things. Seeing him eat rolls of toilet paper, um, and so obviously you can see why my mind went to that the moment that I had heard about this story, and it made me start wondering, if Shoenice22 was still on YouTube, because while I suppose people could find his antics entertaining, they are not sending across a very good message to younger people, to a younger audience. If Shoenice can eat, motor oil, which is clearly not meant for ingestion, well, then maybe I can do it, and I can show off to my friends. Or, better yet, maybe I can pressure somebody else to do this thing. And, well, it didn't harm him, and he looks to be fine, so certainly it won't be a problem there at all. So I got to thinking about Shoenice, and I did a little bit of research on Shoenice, and I found out that, because I didn't know much about him. I genuinely didn't know too much about him. I'd just seen the one or two videos in the past, quite a few years ago. And as I did some research, I found out that apparently his reasoning for doing these eating stunts, which, I mean, that's what they are, is stunts, was because he was working towards the goal of trying to end world hunger. So I believe he was either trying to bring attention to it or perhaps take donations for it. And I'm not sure if his entire channel's, like all the monetization from his channel went to some sort of, charity. I don't know. I genuinely don't. The research that I found did say that he basically, like in interviews even, said that his goal was to end world hunger by eating these crazy things. So, I mean, that's basically what I was able to find out about him. When I went to YouTube to see if I could find him, I found something very interesting. Something very, very interesting to me. And especially, as I've said before, I've been a YouTuber for quite some time now. And I'm very aware of YouTube and its algorithms and its way of demonetizing and striking content that it deems unfriendly, non-advertiser friendly. And I've seen them, be very hostile to people who don't deserve it. People who are making content that is not harmful. It's not, it's not, say, not political. It's not violent content. It's, content that most people would look at and find no problems with it. And then you'd see things along the lines of Logan Paul, which I'm sure most of us have heard about already, where, he, and I feel bad even saying this. It's so appalling that somebody did this, where he went to the suicide forest and filmed a dead body, posted it online on YouTube, against YouTube's terms of service, no less, and basically thought that there was nothing wrong with that. And I never saw the video. I don't intend to see the video, but some of the articles that I've read did say that him and his friends were kind of chuckling throughout this endeavor as well. He apparently went on to say that he did not expect to see anything like that in the suicide forest, and that he went out there just to film a vlog about it being a spooky location. Now, I can't imagine any normal thinking person who does not, of course, intend to see something like that would want to go someplace like that that is infamous for the fact that people go there to kill themselves, um, and not expect to find that sort of thing. But anyway, I'm kind of getting off topic here, and I don't think that there's many people out there who would disagree with most of what I said there. I mean, of course, I'm sure his fans would have some strong opinions on the subject, but I feel like most normal thinking people would, be on the same side of the fence as well the majority of everybody else is. So now YouTube apparently took action a couple of days later. Took them a little while to do so, and they've issued certain consequences to him. They haven't removed his channel or anything like that. But anyway, like I said, I'm sort of digressing. I went to search up Shoenice on YouTube. And what I discovered, at least through all the searching that I have done, is that his account has been terminated for violating YouTube's community guidelines. So I have looked and looked and looked for his channel. And even if you go right now to youtube.com/user/shoenice22, which is the first username that I was aware of him under, the only username that I was aware of him under, you will see there is nothing, and it says this account has been terminated for violating YouTube's community guidelines. So apparently YouTube found out about this and decided that they were going to start taking down content that they deemed inappropriate in the sense of, I presume, these Tide Pod challenges. So, I mean, in a sense, most of the time that these challenges are propagated, mostly is through online video. And while YouTube is not the only source of online video, one could argue that they are, one really could not argue against the fact that they are the premier way to share video with the vast majority of audiences. While you can use YouTube videos, you can, yes, YouTube videos, Facebook supports videos, Snapchat supports video in some regards, and so does Twitter. YouTube is generally the place that people go. I mean, there are other things like Vimeo, I guess, which I don't really know much about. And Twitch, of course, for live streaming content, but for video, YouTube is pretty much where it's at. And I don't think anybody could argue against that. So YouTube decided to reach out and say, well, hey, we are going to take action on this. And I'm looking here. Removing videos. So the Tide Pod challenges. YouTube and Facebook, it looks like, is working to remove videos. As I said, Facebook is another one of those places where people share a lot of video. And people are... and there we go. Advertisements running rampant all over the place as I'm trying to record. But yeah, so fortunately, they're taking action. As they should. I believe they should. I mean, you certainly can't censor... I don't believe that people should censor free speech, but at the same time, if something's dangerous like this, I do believe that it requires, it requires YouTube to do things like this, to take this stuff down, to help stop the propagation of these challenges. And so I do commend YouTube for doing that, but it looks like somehow they stumbled across whether this is related at all, or whether this is something that they've taken him down ages ago and I just didn't know about it. I think it's quite interesting that I found out about it now, and as I said, it may have nothing to do with it, but with Shoenice being the kind of person who would literally eat anything, I didn't even name half of the things that he was eating, but basically if he could chew it, he would eat it. And there was even, I believe, someone told me that there was a live stream that he did of him eating rocks, little tiny rocks like you would see in the bottom of an aquarium. And he ate cups full, like actual measuring cups full of rocks live and ingested all of them. And that is something very dangerous, I think, to be putting out there on the internet for young, susceptible children to see and think, oh, this is pretty cool. I can do this. Or, it doesn't hurt him, so it won't hurt me. So that's just something that I found out and I thought was quite interesting, and I wanted to share with you, especially considering this new thing about the Tide pods, the Tide Pod Challenge. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on all of this, on the Tide Pods, on YouTube taking videos down. Yes, they are indeed crushing people's free speech and free expression, but at the same time, if this goes against their guidelines, and if this can endanger people, then, I feel like they are within their rights to do so, especially as they're a private company, and honestly, they can do whatever they want. They don't have to allow anything on their channel, on their website. So, I think it's best that they're taking action against stuff like this, though I do also think this is something they should have been on from the beginning as well, because, I think we've all seen these sort of challenges, the Cinnamon Challenge. I didn't know what the Cinnamon Challenge was until I looked it up on YouTube and saw people doing the Cinnamon Challenge. So, I think this is something that can be dangerous, and I think it's a good idea, and in fact, a necessary thing to happen, that YouTube steps in and, removes things like this. Not only YouTube, but Facebook and all these. I think it's a great way to help, well, preserve life, really, when you think about it. Because I think any of us who are, of any, I don't want to say elder age, but I think any of us who are older, who are, on the plus side of the teen years anyway, say 25 or more, would have the same sort of feelings about this, where this stuff is stupid, harmful, and I don't believe the majority of anybody who is over the age of 25, unless of course they are looking for views on the internet, would do. Any normal thinking person. However, as I said earlier, I think a lot of younger people are very influenceable, if that's a word, that they very well can fall prey to these things, which they could be fake on the video. But if the person on the video says this is what this is, and someone wants to emulate that, well, they're not necessarily going to know that it was fake, and they're going to go out and get the real product and really end up hurting themselves or potentially dying. So that's my thoughts on the Tide Pods and on Shoenice. So despite the fact that Shoenice thought that his antics could help raise awareness or perhaps money to help with world hunger, I think you still got to be really cautious about the way that you bring that message across to your audience. But that's just my 2 cents. Checking here, doing one more check to see if we have any mail to read before the end of the broadcast, and I don't believe we do. So you know what that means? That means make sure to send in your mail. Make sure to leave comments. Make sure to reach out via message or other things, and let us know what you think. If you agree with most of what I had brought up, about these Tide Pods, or if you have any thoughts on being lazy or procrastination, let me know. Let your voice be heard. We're not going to hear from you until you reach out. So feel free to do so. Agree with me, disagree with me. Let me know what you think. We'll read it here on the air and we'll discuss it in more and further detail. But I think that's going to call it for this episode, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for listening. This has been ANPR, All Night Project Radio. I'm your host, Ryder, and thanks for listening.